Hey guys, it's Aurora with Lavender, Hazelwood. Welcome if it's your first time here, and if it's not your first time here, hi, glad to see you. So today I've got the second part of my Goodbye Jack series topic. So if you haven't seen my last video, it was a goodbye video to my cat Jack, and this is sort of a companion video to that one. I never really thought I would have chosen to do a video on what I'm going to talk about today, but as life opens up opportunities and you just take them. So I thought I would go into the I suppose the ritual that I do when one of my companion animals passes. So I'm going to get into that a little bit later, and I will be showing what I do and his body. So if you're sensitive to that, then you're going to want to skip that part of the video. My intention for doing this is not to weird anybody out, but to educate and give people options for their own grieving process. I've been a little bit obsessed with okay, not obsessed. I've been a little bit preoccupied with death for the last several years. Probably over the last 8 years of my life, I have lost a handful of companion animals as well as grandparents. A handful of grandparents? No, 2 grandparents. And it has had me questioning a lot about the death experience and my own feelings about walking the edge of the underworld, because every time a spirit can go to the underworld, but every time I have to companion one of them, it puts me in a place of having to walk into the underworld as well, and that space can be very hard. It's really hard. It's an initiation for sure. And I think a lot of people don't want to talk about it. And we as a society, as an American society at least, I'm going to speak for myself, we don't handle death very well. Up until I want to say 1940s or 1950s, death was something that you did with your family. Somebody died in your family, you took care of the body, you made all the arrangements, etc. And then there became a death industry in which we then had funeral homes that opened and took care of everything. So there was a severing between our own process of grieving that actually has sort of stunted our own knowing, our own feelings, and has in some cases caused more trauma than necessary. Grieving is a hard thing to do. No one wants to grieve. Unfortunately, it is something that every one of us has to experience as humans on this planet. What they found is that when you cart your deceased one, your loved one, off to a funeral home, and you don't have the hands-on experience and you don't go through your own grieving process, that it actually stays with you longer. So if you can spend time with the body and do what you need to do in order to get past it and understand it and fully recognize what has happened, and granted, I'm talking about sort of a natural-esque death. I'm not talking about somebody being shot or some gruesome accident or something. But what I'm talking about is being able to say goodbye on your own terms. So when you can say goodbye on your own terms and you can let go when it's the appropriate time for you, you have a much cleaner and easier way of coming back and through your grief than if not. So in the spirit of that and bringing death back home, back to us, for the purpose of healing, this is what this video is for. With my own grieving process, something that happens for me is I don't really truly understand what has happened or what is happening or that somebody is dead until I understand and see that rigor mortis has set in. Once they get stiff, then there is something that happens to me where I can let go. where I can understand and comprehend in like a visceral way what has happened. Once that point happens, then something kicks in and I am more free to say goodbye. But up until that point, I need to hold on. I need to go and pet the cat. I need to interact. I need to talk to my loved one, my companion animal, and tell them I love them, tell them, I don't know, just whatever it is that bubbles to the surface that wants to be said. It's almost like getting used to them in the space, in my sphere, as with a different kind of relationship. That grieving process usually takes me, I mean, it depends, I guess, on rigor mortis, but it usually takes me a day, or even 2 days. I held on to Snick for 2.5 days or so, 3 days. Your options are, at this point, burying, incinerating, or aquamation. Most people right now, because it's sort of the trend in our society, is to do cremation. I don't like cremation. 1, because of its environmental impact, and 2, it just kind of freaks me out. So it's not for me. I'd prefer to bury, or aquamate is the latest that I've done. And for more practical reasons, I think burying is my number 1 choice. But when you live in a city and you move houses and you've buried your loved one in your backyard, what do you do? And I have had that conundrum or that quandary, and what I chose to do then was unbury my cat, and I took him to the aquamation place and had his remains dealt with there afterwards. So now I just skip the burying part and go straight to the aquamation, even though I don't like that either. But it's a greener alternative, which is way better than cremation. So having said that, so if you want to keep a body around in your space, the issue is decomposition and stopping that process so that you can do what you need to do. The process is very simple. You can either use dry ice, which you're going to have to keep replenishing once it's finished, or you can get Techni ice, which are like these plastic sheets. I will show you. I will insert. And you can use these as cold packs on a body, and they last a really long time. You can order Techni ice on Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description box for you. FYI, you can use Techni ice just as a cooling mechanism for your hot animals. But getting back to where we're going with this. So you use Techni ice sheets. You're going to change them out once every 4 hours for the first 24 hours, and then after that you change them out every 8 hours. You can slip them in a paper bag or a pillowcase or a towel, whatever you want to use, depending on how large your companion is. If it's cat-sized, then you would put one underneath and one on top. If it's bigger, then you might put a couple underneath, a couple on top. Just basically, you want one at the head, and then you want to cover the body with it. So however big your companion animal is to cover, that's how many you need. Once that is finished, what I did for Jack was I sat with my grief, and I went on a walk, and I found flowers for him, and then I brought them back and I laid them on his body, and I pet him and I talked to him, and then the next morning I picked up the flowers. I created a small bouquet to go with him to the aquamation place. In this bouquet, I just took sprigs of rosemary. Rosemary has a long lineage of being used for remembering the dead. I created 2 small bouquets, one to keep and one to send off with him. And I bundled up some red rose petals. This one was in the shape of a heart, which was sweet, the one I sent off with him. And then I wrote a little note of goodbye and safe passage to him, and then I tied it to his tail. It's a simple ritual. It's a simple way of gathering and physically saying goodbye in a meaningful way. In case you're not familiar with aquamation, it is like cremation, except it's greener. It's a greener alternative. And instead of incineration, it's a liquid solution of lye that decomposes the body faster. So it does basically what nature does, except it does it fast. It does it, I think, within 24 hours. It's pretty quick. I didn't know this at first, but they do also do bone grinding afterwards, and that's what you get back is instead of ashes, you get ground up bones. From what I understand, the skeleton of whoever's been aquamated is extremely, extremely beautifully white. So that's what you get back. And I will show you, what it looks like. So this is, there we go. This is Jack. The place I take him to sends back a little ornament with a paw print on it. Oh. And then you have a box with a heart. And then in the box, so sorry, it's a little hard. So there are options out there. You don't just have to ship your loved one off to the hospital or the crematory because they have refrigeration. You can keep them at home and do what you need to do to sort of finish your grieving process through the whole situation. If you're going through this, much, much love to you. If you have a pet that you love dearly, hopefully this has been informative and helpful. So I'll see you next time, guys. Bye.